A very good day to everyone. I hope you're all well. I'm Kylie from UN Global Compact Network Malaysia and Brunei, and I will be facilitating for this session. First and foremost, thank you all for joining us on the last day of the SME SDG Festival. This workshop titled Introduction to ESG for SMEs is conducted by our knowledge partner, Eden Strategy Institute. Before we start, I would like to first highlight on a few things to all our participants here. First, kindly keep your mic and camera turned off throughout the session. For the best experience, please view this in the speaker's view. Please do note that this session is recorded, and if you're having any connectivity issues, please feel free to restart by leaving the call and jumping back in. We welcome you to be interactive during the session, so if you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box below. And I hope this is clear for everyone. If you have any other questions during the session, please feel free to reach out to me via the chat box below as well. To start, I would first like to thank our knowledge partner, Eden Strategy Institute, for hosting this session with us. And I would now like to invite Claire and Rachel to give an introduction before the whole session. Over to you, Claire.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you guys and UNGC today. Sustainability and especially this topic and how it relates to SMEs is something that's very close to our hearts here at Eden because we work with a lot of SMEs. So before we start the session, right, I would just like to maybe ask you guys to, feel free to introduce yourselves on the chat box. We'd really like for all of us to know who is here and why you're here, that kind of thing. And also, I would like you to maybe take a quick poll before we start about what is your understanding about ESG so far, right? So that I kind of know what levels everyone is at. So feel free to use the chat box to maybe just rank 1 to 5, how familiar you are with the concept of ESG. So I'll just leave this up here for about a minute. Thank you, HM, for scoring. Oh, I see, Robin, you're very familiar. That's great. Wow. Okay. So I see we have a really diverse range of familiarity with the concept of ESG here. So for our workshop today, we will go into okay, Dr. Kim, Loy, yes, of course, there are many definitions of ESG. Yes, so for today's workshop, we will go into sort of a broad overview of ESG, but also we will also be exploring some of the concepts more in depth, so that even those of you who are who rank yourself very familiar with the concept of ESG or are even starting to apply in your organization, we hope that you also find this quite useful for you. So how this session is going to be run is that, first of all, I will start off with just introducing Eden and ourselves, and just letting you know who we are and what we are doing in this space. Then we'll go on to 3 different parts of the workshop. Part 1 of the workshop will be, I'll be speaking about just the sustainability megatrend and how it's being applied in Malaysia currently. We'll be talking about the drivers of sustainability in Malaysia, and also we will round up the first part. We're talking about introduction to the sustainability reporting frameworks. In part 2 of the session, my colleague Rachel will be talking about the business case for sustainability, and we've prepared this specially so that it's tailored towards SMEs. So it won't just be a high level sort of thing that is for large corporates, but we've tried to tailor it as best as possible to SMEs. In the final part of our session, we will be having an interactive component where you guys will be broken up into different breakout rooms, where we will start to help. We will bring you through our sustainability strategy canvas, and also start to help you craft your strategy and thinking about what do you need to think about if you are choosing to go into sustainability reporting in the future. So that's how our session is structured today. So first of all, let me go into the introduction. So who is Eden, right? We are a strategy consulting firm predominantly focused on sustainable innovation. How we do it is that we look at business systems. Whenever we are presented with a problem, we take a systems level overview instead of just narrowly having a focus on that particular problem. We do this because we have a transdisciplinary team, so we're able to bring a lot of different diverse perspectives to the problem. What we do is that we try to help businesses create sustainable advantage and also economic value, at the same time try to solve some societal challenges. And we do this predominantly through innovation. We work across a lot of different industries, so education, healthcare, retail, the built environment. And most recently, we've been trying to focus more with the concept of sustainability in all these different industries. Who do we impact? Our clients are, we have clients who are governments across Southeast Asia and also globally. For example, we have helped the Saudi Arabian government with coming up with a $1 million charity support fund. We also work with a lot of multilateral organizations, well-known ones like, for example, UN Women or UNDP. We also work with a whole range of corporates, so big one, very large corporates, small ones, social enterprises, and a range of nonprofits as well. So we have a whole range of clients and we work across a lot of different industries. So before we actually dive into the technicalities and the commercial components of sustainability, I'd like to just sort of set the tone of this session by just asking all of us to take a step back and think about the bigger picture as to why are we even talking about sustainability? Why is it such a big concern today? So the predominant reason that we talk about sustainability is really because we want to preserve natural resources for not just our future generations, right? But also because the risk is becoming even more real to our generation as well. So we would like to preserve these resources to be able to help maintain the economic stability, but also the quality of life for ourselves and for future generations. In fact, the major theme that is synonymous with sustainability is global warming. So we know that with temperatures rising, there are a whole bunch of catastrophic effects that are related to that. So things like your sea levels rising, increasing floods, or even heavier rain. And scientists have said that 2 degrees Celsius is when we will actually have irreversible damage on the environment. And right now, we know that the recent reports have shown that the 1.5 degrees cap that we've set for ourselves so that we don't come even close to this 2 degrees cap is actually we are approaching that in 2030 already. And Southeast Asia, where we are located, will be one of the regions that will suffer the most from climate change. So I just showed you some pictures which will just give you a visual representation of actually the effects of climate change. So we see on the left a picture of floods in Pahang earlier in January, and on the right a picture of flash floods in KL, which is becoming an even more regular occurrence. Scientists say that we are going to be experiencing even worse floods in the coming decade if we don't try to change our ways drastically. So the world leaders are actually, listening to this and trying to do something about it. And I'm sure all of you have heard the news that COP26 is now going on in Glasgow and is seen as an urgent milestone for us to be able to change our ways, commit to new reduction targets to be able to try and meet this, try and stay below this 1.5 degrees. I'm just showing you some pictures of protesters in Glasgow. So pictures of people to show that people really care about this issue and that it is impacting everyone. So the individuals, the community, businesses, governments, all of us have a part to play. So with setting that tone, let's think about actually what can we do as a business, as an SME that can actually contribute to preventing this catastrophic effects of the climate change. So I'll go into now the first part of our workshop, which is thinking about a high-level overview of what is sustainability and what is ESG. We'll be looking at the drivers of sustainability in Malaysia and also looking at sustainability reporting frameworks that you could possibly use if you are starting to think about doing a sustainability report. So what is ESG? ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance. It's often used as an umbrella term for sustainable and responsible considerations. So under environmental, we think about how the company performs as a steward of nature. Usually it will be things like your impact on biodiversity, water efficiency, energy efficiency, carbon intensity, and also your waste management. In terms of social, we're thinking about how the company interacts with its stakeholders in the community. So typically it will be things like health and well-being of employees, safety, diversity, fair trade, employee welfare, and also community impact. And the final pillar of ESG is governance, is how your company is run. So typically we'll think of examples of things like executive pay, your shareholder rights, board diversity, reporting, and audits. So what is Malaysia doing about sustainability? Sustainability is a key topic in Malaysia now. It is a mega trend. And one of the major documents that have come out recently is the 12 Malaysia Plan, in which the government highlights sustainability as a major theme. So theme 3 under the 12 Malaysia Plan is advancing sustainability. There's a whole chapter dedicated to it, which is titled Chapter 8, Advancing Green Growth for Sustainability and Resilience. And you can see that over the next 5 years, these are the KPIs that the government is intending to achieve. So you have things like reducing GHG emissions by up to 45%, making government green procurement as a 25%. So all these things might have a knock-on effect, especially if you're supplying services to the government. The next major document that the Malaysian government has produced recently is Budget 2022, in which they've also given a spotlight to sustainability. So if you look at number 47, it specifically states sustainability agenda under one of its topics. And in the speech given by a finance minister, there is specific allocation for SMEs. If you can see paragraph 215 about Bank Negara having a $1 billion ringgit fund to be able to help SMEs start to adopt low carbon practices and invest in low carbon investments. But this push is not only coming from the government, right? So large corporates, which some of you may be suppliers to, are also taking stock of their ESG performance to track year-on-year improvements and also setting long-term sustainability goals. So 99 of the top 100 listed companies in Malaysia are actually already publishing sustainability reports. This is in part driven by Bursa Malaysia's 2016 push to make it compulsory for all listed companies to start reporting to a certain extent on their sustainability measures. But beyond just reporting on that, a lot of large corporates have already started setting goals. So you see Sime Darby Plantation has a policy to ensure suppliers meet sustainability standards. So I'd like to iterate, if you are a supplier for Sime Darby Plantation, this might be something that you also have to face in the future. So we can see that in the Malaysian landscape, we are taking stock of the sustainability megatrend. And there are very concrete policies and money being put in this area to be able to help SMEs start to green out their businesses. So with that in mind, right, if you're starting to think about, okay, so I care about sustainability and I'd like to, try to start understanding how to assess my company's sustainability performance, you might be starting to think about, okay, what reporting frameworks are there available to me? And when you dive into that world, it may be very confusing because there's a whole alphabet soup of different types of sustainability frameworks or standards or certifications that you could possibly adopt. So what I'm going to show you next is maybe a way that we've tried to categorize each of these different alphabet acronyms in a way that might make more sense to you. We will also be diving a bit deeper into some of the more commonly used frameworks. So we've categorized them into indices, frameworks and standards, and certifications. So indices are, this is not a comprehensive, it's not comprehensive of everything that's out there, but these are some of the indices that you might have heard about. So there is the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, there is FTSE4Good, Bursa Malaysia has a FTSE4Good index, and the MSCI ESG ratings. So these would typically score a company based on their ESG performance. For the indexes like FTSE4Good and Dow Jones, depending on how you score on their ESG metrics, that will determine whether or not you're included in the index. Whereas MSCI, it's more of they just score companies and give them ratings, so investors can refer to these ratings if they want to invest in them. Frameworks and standards are probably the ones that you've heard even more about. So there is a whole bunch of them out there. Typically, the ones that we commonly come across and what most companies report against would be the GRI, which is the Global Reporting Initiative, the Sustainability Development Goals, which is the UN SDGs, science-based targets is also very popular, and you may also have heard of perhaps TCFD, which is a Task Force Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. So how do we actually differentiate all of these, right? So GRI is probably the most commonly used standard. It is a very wide standard which requires you to report in the whole range of ESG, components. Sustainability development goals are much more forward-looking, so they're less about assessing your enterprise's current sustainability performance, but more of aspirational goals in which your organization would be kind of targeting. So like your North Star, for example, typical UN SDG, one of the UN SDG goals are things like zero hunger or no poverty. So this is something that would kind of be like your organization's North Star. For science-based targets, it's about what targets your organization sets for reducing your carbon emissions, which is based on the Paris Agreement. So any targets that you set will have to be verified by the Science Based Targets Organization. For TCFD, which is something also quite commonly spoken about, it's about how you identify the climate risks, which might actually have an impact on your financial performance. And the others here, SASB, CDSP, CDP, IFRS, I'm not going to go into all of them, but they are typically much more used for public listed companies, and it's geared more towards how environmental risks would impact your financial performance. And you report against this so for financial reports that are made public. But I think for SMEs, the ones that you would be thinking about would be the more commonly used ones, which are GRI, SDGs, maybe science-based targets, but that also is not so common among the SME world. For certifications, typical ones that you see are B Corp, or maybe the Malaysian Green Building Council certification, Fair Trade, or US LEED. Again, this is not comprehensive, but it's just to give you a sense of what is generally seen out there. And organizations would try to get these certifications to prove that they've met certain requirements. So I'm going to go into, now you know that there is a lot of different types of frameworks, right? Actually, there is a push right now in the COP26 summit to actually try and unify all these frameworks so that it's not so confusing, but it's still very much under development, and we might see it coming to place in the next few years. But I'd like to speak a little bit more about GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, because if an organization is starting on their sustainability reporting journey, it's most likely that they will start with thinking about GRI, because that is one of the most commonly used standards. So the language and the terminology that you'll be using in GRI would be quite well known globally. So if you're thinking about reporting under GRI, I'm going to take you through how the GRI is structured. So the GRI is a set of different standards. There are two main categories of their standards. The first is their universal standards, which is what you see GRI 101, 102, and 103. And then the next part is the topic-specific standards. So how you would start is that you would start with the universal standards. With 101, it sets out the GRI reporting principles. So if you want to have a report that is GRI standards, you have to abide by these principles. So in the 101 guide, it will state how exactly you can abide by these principles. So for example, you can see principle 4 is completeness. So this is a principle that you will have to try and make sure that all your information is complete when you're compiling the report. So this is just the principles that you will abide by when you are producing the report. Under 102 and 103, it's also still under universal standard disclosures, So 102 will be more general disclosures. It will be things like the name of your organization, or even your strategy, the scale of your organization. So you disclose under all of these things. And if you see on the right, it shows you guidance as well as to how you would disclose against these things. So for example, if you've chosen significant changes to organization and supply chain, what do you need to report under these things, which is the reporting requirements? And then there will be guidance as well as to how you get this information and what exactly you would need to report. Under GRI 103, you would have to report on something called materiality. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with materiality as a financial concept. But in sustainability reporting world, materiality is much wider, especially in GRI. You're thinking about materiality in terms of economic, environmental, and social impact. And one very unique thing about materiality and sustainability is that you have to include all your stakeholders in trying to decide what is a material topic for your organization. So if you decide to start reporting on the GRI, these are basically your starting points. So GRI 101, 102, and 103. When you go through GRI 103, you have to start to think about what topics are actually material to your organization. So material topics would be very different for different organizations. For example, something that is material to an oil and gas company, for example, would be very different for a software company. So you can choose your material topics based on your company and with consultation from your stakeholders, but you can also take reference from the topic-specific standards, which you see under here, which is GRI 200, 300, and 400. So here's an example of what is included under GRI 200, 300, and 400. So for example, market presence might be a material topic for your company. So you would select that as a material topic and you would disclose against that. If you've chosen, let's say waste, for example, as a material topic for your company, then you would also disclose against that. And each of these topics would also have guidelines as to how you would disclose against that. So for example, if you've chosen waste, they would tell you what actually are the requirements for you to report against this 306 topic. So here's an example of actually what a company that has actually gone through this exercise of trying to determine what the material topics are like, and they've come up with this materiality matrix. So I'd like to draw your attention towards the two parameters of this matrix. You have on the y-axis, the importance to stakeholders, and on the x-axis, the importance to the business. So typically, these are the two main parameters that you would use to try and determine what is material to your company. So for example, like Axiata has determined that network quality and coverage is what is important for both their business and their stakeholders. So they have listed that in the top right-hand corner as high for business and for stakeholders. And they would then go into different other topics that might be important to them. So data privacy is important for them as a network business. So it would be probably somewhere in the right-hand quadrant as well. So this is how you would go through the exercise. You would sit down with your stakeholders to determine, what's actually important for my business. You can use the GRI standards that you saw earlier, the 200, 300, and 400 for inspiration as to what might be material to your business. And then you would come up with this materiality matrix and try to figure out where the different topics stand on this matrix. In terms of prioritization, if you have everyone has like a limitation on resources and time, right? You will probably prioritize those in the top right-hand quadrant that you've identified as material and high importance for both businesses and also for stakeholders. So based on all these information that you've gathered, you can start to actually compile your report, either in the form of in a standalone sustainability report, or perhaps you would integrate it into any other reports that you're producing. So Eden, I mentioned earlier, we work with a lot of SMEs and we understand the challenges that come when you try to gather data or not very sure about where to get the information or what actually are we reporting against, how do we measure it. We're actually developing a toolkit to help you actually calculate your carbon emissions, your water consumption, and also your waste production. It will look something like this, where you can actually input things like your electricity consumption, your water consumption, your waste that you're generating, and then we would actually generate a score for you and show you a brief overview as to how you're performing against all these different environmental metrics. So this would be free for use, but it's still under development at the moment. So at the end of the session, we'll be sharing a QR code where you can register your interest, and when it's ready, we will send you a link to this toolkit. So right now, I'm just going to pass the time to my colleague Rachel, who will go through the business case for sustainability, which is tailored for SMEs.
Thanks, Claire. Give me a second while I pull up the slides for all of you. Okay, sorry. One second. Okay, you should be able to see the slide now. So thanks, Claire, once again for bringing us through the some of the key concepts in sustainability, like what ESG is, what sustainability reporting is, and what materiality means. And I think right now for you in the audience, the question that you might have on your minds is, why should I care, right? Like why, how is sustainability important to me as an individual and also to me as a business or as an organization? So in this next section, we will try our best to answer that question. And the first thing I think to ask is, what is the impact of sustainability on some of the main stakeholders that have the greatest influence on any business? And to ask the key stakeholders that influence business decisions most significantly would be the government, investors, and also consumers or your customers. So let's take a look at how sustainability is impacting each of these three stakeholders. Now, the first one that we have seen earlier on in the presentation from Claire is how the Malaysian government is increasingly incorporating sustainability into its national plan. And it's not just Malaysia, it is governments across the world that are looking to increase the requirements that businesses have, requirements for businesses around sustainability performance and also sustainability reporting. If you see the graph that I'm showing on the screen right now, what it shows is that from 2006 all the way to 2020, there's been an increasing number of voluntary and mandatory reporting provisions issued by governments across the world. And in fact, there was a 74% increase in the number of sustainability reporting requirements issued by global regulators between 2016 and 2020 alone, and that's just in a span of 5 years. At the moment, 90% of these sustainability reporting requirements are targeted at public listed companies, which tend to be the larger MNCs. But for SMEs as well, it is something to take note of because usually for SMEs, for public listed companies, they engage the services of service providers, which many of which are SMEs. And as public listed companies are increasingly looking to hit sustainability requirements or sustainability KPIs, they will also increasingly demand their vendors to provide green products and services or more sustainable products and services so that they can meet these regulatory requirements. Next will be investors, and this is an important group of people because they are the ones that pour money into businesses. So what we have seen, especially so in the past 2 years with the COVID-19 pandemic, is that investors are increasingly looking for opportunities to invest in sustainable partnerships and businesses. A total of an estimator of $1 trillion will be put into green bonds in 2021 alone. And this is up from virtually none, zero in green finance in 2012. So you can see the scale and how rapidly this entire industry is growing, and investors are increasingly looking to fund businesses that are more sustainable, more responsible, and more ethical. And 79% of investors in APAC have responded to a poll saying that they have increased their ESG investments moderately or significantly in response to COVID-19. So this means that they have been putting more money into companies that focus on environmental, social, and governance factors. And the COVID-19 pandemic has really been, I mean, from what we have seen, it has been a great catalyst for ESG investment, because it is clear that when we don't prioritize health, when we don't prioritize the environment, there are many risks, including economic risks, that we face as a globe, right? For example, the huge economic crisis because of the pandemic is something that investors are now, using as a reference point when we talk about climate change, which is the next impending major crisis that we'll face as a globe. And consumers, which are our customers, right, our business customers, they are also rethinking where they put money or which businesses they support in response to both the climate crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic. About 80% of ASEAN consumers have said that they value sustainability and they have made changes to their lifestyle to be more eco-friendly. And 71% of all consumers globally in a survey conducted this year said that they agree that if they perceive that a brand is prioritizing profit over people, they will lose trust in that brand forever. And this is, it is a very clear indication that people are demanding for businesses to become more responsible, to become more sustainable, because, our experience in the past 2 years with COVID-19 has shown that we cannot live in a world that is not, that is at risk of ecosystem damage or irreversible damage to our ecosystems, and also at risk of health pandemics and other kinds of social risks that in the past businesses have deprioritized, right, compared to making profits. In this decade alone, half of the world's population is under 30 years old, and this demographic, or this group of people, are the ones that are the most vocal about climate change, about business responsibility, about transparency, about ethical supply chains. And these are the consumers that are going to put their money are going to put their support with businesses that are sustainable, that incorporate sustainability into their core strategies. All right, so what do these, the changing behaviors in these three major stakeholder groups, what does that mean for SMEs? So we see that this shift in consumer demand for more sustainable goods and services, as well as increasing regulatory pressure and more money going into green finance, first of all, it will affect large companies, right? Because these large companies, they need to comply with the regulations that they are operating in. If not, they will face penalties, or they may be barred from operating in that particular country. They also need to be answerable to their investors who are looking to put their money into businesses that they trust, and also to appease their consumers, right, who also want to support businesses that are sustainable and more resilient. And the combination of these various factors eventually also affects how SMEs operate. Now, because of all these changing factors in the regulatory landscape, in investor, consumer demand, and also with the large companies, right, how they are designing themselves to become more sustainable, all this will mean growing demand for SMEs to also provide more sustainable goods and services, so that they can help to, first of all, meet the sustainability KPIs of the larger companies who need to report if they are listed in the stock exchange. Also, SMEs that serve individual consumers will need to meet the changing demands of their consumers, and also SMEs need to comply with the regulations as well that in the countries that they're operating in. So all this means that there's very, very much pent-up demand for such goods and services that SMEs can provide. And at this point, it may seem that SMEs are sort of being pushed into a corner, right? Like, oh, there's so many developments going on in sustainability. Now we feel like pressure to also start taking note of this trend and also incorporating this concept of sustainability into our business practices. But we would like to also lend a different perspective to this, which is that for SMEs, there is also immense upside if you were to invest in sustainable products and services, especially in the long term. So what are some of these commercial benefits that the SMEs may stand to gain? Now, first of all, there will be cost savings because by reducing the amount of resources that's being used, right? By improving the efficiency of your energy use, your water use, or waste management, or by just making sure your supply chains are more resilient, SMEs can expect to achieve cost savings because of all these efficiencies. And at the same time, they can also expect to increase revenue because now they can charge price premiums for highly sought after products and services, especially if they're early to market by providing green products and services, if there are not many other similar service providers at the moment. And this also allows SMEs to increase their market share. And finally would be the improvement in capital access or funding from external investors. Because of investors are more confident in your business, they can see that you as a business, even though SMEs might have less resources than larger companies, if SMEs can show that they are planning ahead, trying to incorporate more resilient business operations, then investors are more confident to put their money in the business. And there's not just commercial or money-related benefits, but there's also other types of intangible benefits that we see coming out from SMEs that are incorporating sustainability into their practices. Now, one of them would be to reduce their own business risk by preempting negative business impacts to the environment, to society, or to their own workers. For example, if you as a company, you are looking forward to say like, okay, let's say in my energy use, this is a very material issue to us. We consume a lot of energy as a company. Eventually, this might lead to taxes from the government or fines if we go above a certain threshold. And now we are preempting, those future implications. Then it reduces the overall risk of the business, right? Because you're planning ahead, you're making provisions, and you're just strengthening the core operating principles of the company. This one is also extremely important, which is the reputation of the company. Consumers, as we know, are looking to support more responsible, ethical companies, right? We saw it from a statistic before that there is an increasing demand from consumers to support such companies. Lastly would be the talent attraction. So this one should not be underestimated as well. For companies that want to, attract the best talent they can in the market, especially within a tight labor market, by branding themselves as and practicing what they preach, right? If they are a progressive company, if they are really serious about running a sustainable business, this is definitely an attractive feature for people in the younger generation, definitely. So I just want to put some color into what I've been sharing in the past couple of slides, which is the benefits that SMEs can experience if they were to incorporate these sustainable business models within their own organizations. So I want to share some case studies of real companies that have done so. And the first one is Style Theory, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but this is a clothing rental company that operates in both Singapore and Jakarta. So what they do, right, is that they their key principle is to promote responsible and sustainable fashion. And what they do is they provide monthly subscription packages to that people can sign up for. So every month, if you sign up for their clothing rental service, you get a box with different clothing items. And at the end of the month, you can return this box and get another box of different clothing items. So this helps consumers get a variety of clothing items without necessarily having to keep purchasing brand new items, because if once they wear it, they can return it to the store, and then the return items are sent to other subscribers. So it's sort of circulated within their user base. Now, this has been a very successful business model. So they grew from a base of 70,000 active users in 2018 to 200,000 this year. They have also attracted $30 million USD in investment from very reputable investors such as SoftBank, Alpha JWC Ventures, and also Paradise Group. So this also shows the appetite that investors have to invest in businesses that practice sustainable business models. And in terms of their own environmental impact, they have managed to successfully diverted 600,000 used clothing items from landfills. So instead of throwing these old items away, they have managed to save them and use them as part of their business. The next example I want to share is a SME that is based in Malaysia. It's called Ihanda. It is a company that was founded in 2009 with headquarters in Shah Alam in Selangor. And what the company does is, so they are an engineering solutions provider, and sustainability is at the core of their business model. So similar to what we saw in Style Theory, but this one, they are in a different industry, which is in the engineering industry. And what they do is they take heat waste that is generated from buildings, they compress this heat, and then they recycle it and channel it back into the same building to use for heating or air conditioning. And this helps buildings save energy or achieve energy savings of up to 80%. So they have a very grand ambition, which is to reduce carbon emissions annually, reduce carbon emissions by 200 million tons annually by 2030. Because of the work that they do, they were one of the 4 Malaysian startups in the Forbes 100 to watch list. They have 100 successfully completed projects and network of partners across the world. So this shows that the demand that from all across the world, right, for service providers like them. And their environmental impact has also been, it has been growing, right? They were able to reduce the carbon emissions of the Malaysian hospitality market by 100,000 tons per year. And one more example I want to share is Artmatrix. This is also a company that is based in Malaysia. They are an SME, and they are in the office furniture space. So what they do is they help to build open office environments for companies, but they are very focused on providing sustainable and environmentally friendly products. So their own factory in Malaysia is a Green Building Index certified building. Their products have also achieved various sustainability accolades and certifications, and they are even trialing carbon footprinting labeling on their products, and they aim to raise the carbon savings each year when as and when their products are being purchased. So as I mentioned, they have numerous certifications. This includes the Prime Minister Hibiscus Award in Malaysia, the Good Environmental Choice Award in Australia, and the Singapore Green Building Council Green Product Certification in Singapore. So you can imagine having these number of certifications across different markets naturally gives them a market competitiveness, even in overseas markets. So they're able to compete with domestic brands in markets like Singapore and Australia as well. They also won the Sustainable Business Award for SMEs this year, in recognition of their efforts to really incorporate environmentally friendly products into their services. And they work across many countries, and they have clients in 22 different countries, including governments and MNCs. So the couple of examples I showed you, all of them are in different industries. They are all tackling the problem of tackling sustainability in different ways. But what we are hoping to show through these few examples is some of the benefits that SMEs stand to gain when they really start thinking about sustainability, right? The cost savings, the market share, the increase in market share, the reputation from all these awards being listed in the Forbes 100 to watch list, which naturally leads them to increase revenue, more business sustainability, people looking to partner them, and just a whole host of business benefits. So this brings me to the last section of the workshop. And this couple of examples I shared, maybe they resonate with you because these are also smaller companies. And the question on your mind now might be, how do I get started on my sustainability journey as a business? And this entire process of sustainable transformation is something that Eden is very much involved in. We have, this is something that we're really trying to help our clients do. And to be honest, it is not an easy process. It is a very long process because a transformation like this requires many different stakeholders in a business to come together. It requires proper planning and strategy, it requires funding, it requires people being put in positions where they are responsible. So what we have done is we have developed what we call the sustainability strategy canvas. So you can see how it looks like on the screen here. And this canvas, how it works is it is the way that it is a worksheet that we use to structure the different components of a business or different, sorry, let me rephrase. We use it to structure different business aspects that need to be considered when embarking on a sustainability transformation. There are many different aspects, right? As I mentioned earlier, it is not a linear or easy process. But to break it down for you, there's a couple of different components that we'll consider. One of it would be the sustainable organization vision and mission. So as what this means is that as an organization, what is your vision and mission, right? How do you plan to contribute to or plan to become a more sustainable organization? There's also consideration of external pressures that you may be facing. It could be government regulations. It could be, the things that we shared just now, right? Investor pressure, consumer demand. And what are the materiality factors that are important to your business in the context of your industry and in the context of the country that you're operating in? Then we come to actually developing ideas on how to become more sustainable. And so we call this a sustainable value proposition. When we're thinking about this, we also think about what are some of the risks you may face if you were to adopt a new solution or to change your own business model in a certain way. And what are some of the benefits that you may achieve from doing so? So we call this the business case. And if you have a good business case for being sustainable, that means that it is a net positive initiative for your company. We also consider supporting organizational design. So this refers to things within your organization that enable this transition to be more seamless. So this could involve better management, better organizational culture, more skills, improvement in skill sets and capabilities of the people, incentives within the organization, and so on. And lastly, we also talk about what is the impact that you're trying to create, right? How can we measure this impact? What does this impact look like in the short term versus the long term? So this entire canvas, it's not something that can be done overnight. But we just want to show you, so that you are aware that these are the various factors to consider when moving towards a more sustainable business. So we would like to get you a bit more active within this workshop. It is an interactive workshop. So hopefully, you can take away something useful after this short exercise that we have planned for you. Now, as I've shown just now on the screen, there's many different factors around building a sustainable business. And one thing we want to zoom in on for today's session would be identifying key material issues to a company. So usually this is the starting point for any business when you're drafting your sustainability strategy, right? So earlier on, Claire was sharing what sustainability means, what materiality means. And just to reiterate, materiality means materiality issues are the issues that are the most important to your business. It is the most important in terms of being something that your stakeholders care about, and also something that affects your business performance. Now, how do you determine what what constitutes material issues, right? So first of all, you need to think of the context of your organization. As Claire shared just now, it's very different. The material issues are very different if you're an oil and gas company versus being a software company, versus being a company in engineering and so on. The next question to ask is, how does your organization actually impact the economy, the environment, or people? So the way that your organization impacts these three areas will also affect, what are the issues that are most material to your company. And lastly, the question to ask then would be, how significant are these impacts? And of course, the more significant they are, the more material they are to your company, right? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask our host of this meeting to share a link to all of you in the audience here. And this link will lead you to the materiality assessment worksheet. So this is a simple table that we have prepared. It's just a simple checklist that you can fill up when we get into our breakout rooms for you to identify what are the most material topics to your company, right? So when you click on the link, make sure to download a copy of it, an offline copy of it, so that you're not working on the shared online version. All right, at this point, I'm going to take a pause and I will welcome any questions from the floor around this exercise before we get split into our various groups. So just to add on quickly here, there'll be 3 breakout rooms. We have myself and Claire, who will be facilitators for a room each, and also Angeline, who is a consultant at Eden. She's also a sustainability consultant at Eden, and she will be facilitating the 3rd group when we get into our session later. So feel free to either unmute yourself if you have any questions now, or just type in the chat box.
Rachel, there's one question. Kyrie asks whether we can share the canvas since it's not really clear.
Do you mean the full sustainability canvas?
Yep.
Yeah, I will try to zoom in a little bit, maybe towards the end of the session. Right, are there any other questions? So as you download the worksheet, you should be able to see examples of material topics as well on the left-hand column. And feel free to ask the facilitators if you're unclear of what these different topics mean. Okay. If there's no questions, may I trouble our host to split us into groups of 3? I see a question from Dr. Loy about what happened to the G in our checklist. So by G, I assume you're referring to the governance factors. That's a good question. So in our checklist, you will notice that we only show the environmental, economic, and the social factors. And that's because these are the topic-specific factors according to the Global Reporting Initiative. So the G portion of it, actually, if you were to refer to the GRI standards, they're applicable to all businesses and all organizations. Is what they call universal standards. So in that case, there's no need to pick what is important under governance, because technically everything under governance should apply to all organizations. So hopefully that answers your question. Angeline, can I check if you are assigning us to our breakout rooms?
Actually, I see it on my screen, so I will assign people just arbitrarily.
I'm actually halfway doing it as well. I already created 3 rooms, yeah. Rachel,
Okay, great.
Sorry for the delay.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks everyone for your patience. So this exercise will take about 15 to 20 minutes to go through it within our rooms, and then we'll join back the main room around 3:15. Yeah.
Hi everyone, Kylie here. I've already assigned everyone to their rooms. And Angeline, you'll be in the third room here.
Yep.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the main room. Let's give a couple of seconds for everyone to come in. All right, so I hope that all of you had a productive session. I know it wasn't a lot of time to complete the entire worksheet, but at least, if you took a look at the list of questions or the list of material topics and started thinking about it, I think that is really the intention that we have, which is to kickstart thinking around what is important to your company. Earlier on, Claire mentioned that she showed a couple of screenshots of the toolkit that we have in development. So now we would like to share a link to the to just a registration form where you can indicate your interest if you would like to be informed when we launch this toolkit, which is slated to be early next year. Angeline has also shared the link in our chat box, so you can click on that link to access the survey. It will take you just a couple of seconds to fill in. And as we are coming to the close of the workshop, I'd just like to, just to round up the past 1.5 hours that we have spent together with, just a thought for all of you here, right? Which is that sustainability is not something that can be done overnight, and it is a continuously evolving process. I don't think anyone right now has all the answers, around all the frameworks, all the guidance, assurance testing, and so on. And as the sector evolves, as this mega trend evolves, more and more bodies are putting effort and time to unify various frameworks, standardize certain requirements, so that it is easier for businesses and individuals to become more sustainable. And hopefully in the past 1.5 hours that we have shared with you, you managed to pick up some key concepts around sustainability, get a better understanding of what it means in Malaysia's context as well as in the context of SMEs, and to be able to bring some of these ideas and concepts back to your team as well, just to raise awareness within your business as to what sustainability would look like for your organization. So thank you all for your kind participation, especially from myself and Claire. We really appreciate your proactive engagement with us. And yeah, I'd just like to open the floor to any questions that you might have for us around the workshop or around ourselves or Eden. There's a question.
Rachel, I have a question about the criteria of governance. Actually, we just talked about the environmental, social, about governance. Why is a governance? Is it a business ethic or any is for us to easy to understand what it's about governance?
Yeah, thanks for bringing up this question. It's a good question. So actually, when we talk about governance, what we're talking about is how a company is run. This is to do with, who is in your board, how do you elect people into your board, right? How often do you change your board members? How transparent are your internal processes? How do you, what are some of the incentive structures in the company? How does incentive structures work in your organization? So all those things around how a company is being governed, those are the factors that fall under the governance theme when we talk about ESG. In this particular exercise that you just did, we left out the governance factors from the material topics because from using the GRI standards for ESG reporting, actually governance factors are necessary for all companies. It's necessary for all companies to report on their governance factors. So it is not like, you can choose whether or not to report on governance factors, but which is why we left it out of this particular exercise, because actually here we wanted to say out of those remaining material topics that we have to decide, right, whether we want to report on or not, which are the ones we should focus on at the moment. Does that answer your question, Yong-Hui?
Yes, it's a compulsory governance. As a public listed company, it's a compulsory, right?
Yeah. So it should be applicable to all companies. Whereas the ones that you see in your worksheet, right, those are the ones that are based on your own company's context.
Yeah, okay. Yes, thank you.
All right, I think we have time for one last question. Feel free to just turn on your mic or just type it in the comment box.
I have one question.
Yes.
Sustainability is something like, just now you mentioned about the mega trend, buzzword, hoo-ha, outside there, So which one is actually the right one, or, there's no standard. I mean, they got standard, but then which one to follow, this kind of thing. So everybody start to introduce method A, then the other one method B, the other party method 3, method C, So the SME become more confusing at the end of the day. So how to, to review or to see which one actually valid? Finally, there's no whitewashing kind of thing, this kind of thing. Thank you.
Thanks for this question. Sorry, I didn't manage to catch your name.
Khairil.
Khairil?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the question. That is a good question. So as of now, actually, there's many different sustainability standards out there. So how do we know what should we report on, right, or what to follow in the first place? If you take some time to just search up, sustainability reports, actually, it can be a tedious affair to go through every single one of them to see, okay, what is this standard supposed to be used for? What is this other framework supposed to be used for? To simplify this entire process, what we're recommending for SMEs as a starting point is to follow the Global Reporting Initiative, the GRI standards. So this is the standards that are most widely used by organizations worldwide for sustainability reporting. Now, if you are a listed company, or if let's say you're in quite a niche industry, in investment, you're in an investment fund, for example, then these different types of industries might have their own standards that are more relevant to them. But broadly speaking, as a blanket, it would be the GRI standards or the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, to report against as a starting point. I think the question about whitewashing and making sure that the reporting is not fluff, right? It boils down to really having solid data and being able to back up the data that you're reporting. Because if you think about it, anyone can just write a sustainability report. You can say a lot of nice things about what your company has done, and you can publish it online. But what really gives confidence to investors or whoever reads the report is a sustainability audit. So this is when you engage an external auditor to come and review your report to see whether the data collected can be verified or not. So for sustainability reports that have an auditor that has looked through it before, that would be the gold standard of sustainability reporting.
All right, thank you. Further to that, is there any accredited body that recognize those third party to perform the audit on the sustainability report? And then on the internal so-called people, so-called, let's say I'm looking for certified sustainable training accredited by some any company or in Malaysia or in Singapore, or even in UK, US. Is there any training talking about this certified sustainability competence or practitioner, something like that? Thank you.
Yeah, so for your first question on the auditing, there are many different bodies that provide. So you can have like consultants that also do auditing, or you can have specialized auditing bodies that do sustainability reporting. So I think it depends on which of these companies have the certification to do that. The second question on the people, right? Sorry, can you remind me again what the question was about?
Certified sustainable practitioner, or
okay, yeah. So to be certified as a sustainability professional, I think it depends on actually the exact certification you want to get first. You can be GRI certified, for example, or you can be certified in all these other different standards. So based on which of these standards you want to be certified in, or what kind of certification you want to get, right? Whether there's also ISO standards and so on. You have to go to those organizations, and on their websites, you can easily find training programs or their own certified trainers who can provide these kinds of certification programs. So all this information should be available online once you have a clear idea of what is the certification you want.
So Carol, for example, if you're trying to, so Carol, if you're trying to produce a GRI report and you want to be, fully sure that you are certified and everything, you can actually get GRI certifications, and there are many bodies out there who will actually run a training course for you for a fee, of course, for you to become GRI certified.
All right, thanks Claire, thanks Rachel.
Yeah. Okay, we have come to the 3:30 mark, so I'm gonna call this session to a close. But before that, once again, I want to extend a big thank you to all of you for taking the time to attend this session, and we hope that you have gained some useful information and insights from this particular session. Feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn. Also, feel free to drop your own LinkedIn profiles into this chat box so that we can all connect with each other. And yeah, I wish everyone a good weekend ahead. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much, Claire, Rachel, and Angeline, for hosting this wonderful session for us. I really hope that everyone found this as insightful as I did, and I really hope that this session is able to help everyone incorporate more sustainability practices within your businesses or even company. So today's session is coming to an end, and on behalf of UN Global Compact Network Malaysia and Brunei, and also our knowledge partner, Eden Strategy Institute, I'd like to thank everyone again for making your time in your busy schedules just to join us. I would also like to lastly invite everyone here to come join us at our upcoming event, the Go ESG ASEAN 2021 Virtual Summit, which is happening on 24th and 25th November. Once you sign up for the event, you will get access to a month-long virtual exhibition where you can visit other SMEs booth just to look at their sustainable products. I'll be sharing the link to the event in the chat box below, and I really hope to see you guys there. With that, I wish you all to stay safe and have a pleasant day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.